Wealthy man dies and his children arrive to take their part of the inheritance. However, none of them expected what came next. Emily Hawthorne, the eldest, adjusted her tailored black coat and surveyed the room with a mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. The manor, with its high ceilings and intricate woodwork, had been a backdrop to her childhood, a place of cherished memories now overshadowed by their father's recent passing. Her green eyes, usually so steady, were clouded with a deep sadness that she fought to keep at bay. "Feels like time has stopped here," Daniel Hawthorne remarked, his voice tinged with a trace of bitterness as he followed Emily. His tall frame, clad in a dark suit that seemed slightly too large for him, moved with an easy grace. But today, his usual charisma was replaced by a somber gravity. Dad's passing leaves a void that's hard to fill. The room seemed to close in on them as the others arrived. Sarah Hawthorne entered quietly, her delicate features shadowed by the brim of a black hat. She clutched a worn leather sketchbook to her chest, her fingers tracing the familiar, comforting contours of the cover. The manor had been a canvas for her childhood dreams, yet now it felt like a mausoleum for the life she had shared with her father. Rachel Hawthorne, the youngest, arrived last, her entrance marked by a sharp click of her high heels on the marble. Her demeanor was calm, almost eerily composed, as if she were determined to assert her control over the proceedings, regardless of the circumstances. "Welcome, everyone," Emily said, her voice breaking the silence. She forced a small, weary smile, trying to bridge the gap between her siblings. "I'm glad we could all be here together." Rachel's lips curved into a faint, measured smile. "Yes, well, we all knew this day would come. It's just harder than I expected." The siblings made their way to the drawing room, where the fireplace was lit, casting a warm glow that seemed out of place against the somber mood. The room was filled with relics of their father's life, portraits of a younger Charles, the trophies of a man who had built an empire, and the leather-bound books that spoke of his intellect and ambition. Sarah hesitated by the window, her gaze drifting out to the manicured gardens that now seemed forlorn. "I used to sit here for hours sketching the view," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "It's strange to think this place will never feel the same." Daniel took a seat near the fireplace, his fingers tracing the ornate woodwork of the armchair. "It's the memories that make this place special," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "And those memories, they're what we're here to honor." Rachel, ever practical, wasted no time. "We should focus on the matter at hand," she said, her tone brisk. "We need to prepare for the reading of the will. I'm sure Dad left detailed instructions." Emily nodded, trying to maintain a sense of calm. "Yes, let's make sure we're all ready for what's to come. It's going to be difficult, but we need to handle it with respect." The siblings exchanged glances, each reading the other's unspoken thoughts. They were united in their grief, but divided by the looming uncertainty of their father's will. As they gathered around the fireplace, the room seemed to contract with the weight of their shared loss and the anticipation of the decision that lay ahead. In the quiet that followed, the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the space, a reminder of the time that was slipping away. Emily could almost hear her father's voice echoing through the manor's corridors, urging them to come together. As the hour of reckoning drew near, the siblings stood at the precipice of change, each one grappling with their own expectations and fears about the future. And so the stage was set. Hawthorne Manor, once a symbol of family unity and wealth, now awaited the resolution of a dispute that could either tear them apart or bring them closer together. The great hall of Hawthorne Manor was unusually silent as the family gathered, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on their shoulders. The ornate chandelier overhead, a relic of opulence from another era, cast flickering shadows on the walls, as if mirroring the uncertainty that had settled over the siblings. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and the muted clatter of footsteps as the family attorney, Mr. Larkin, made his way to the grand oak desk at the far end of the room. Emily, Daniel, Sarah, and Rachel took their seats in a semicircle facing the desk, their expressions a mix of nervousness and resolve. The family attorney, an elderly man with silver hair and a face lined with years of experience, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat, signaling that the moment they had been dreading was about to commence. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Larkin began, his voice steady but carrying a hint of solemnity. "As you know, we are here to read the last will and testament of Charles Hawthorne." The room fell into a heavy silence, the only sound the soft rustle of paper as Mr. Larkin opened the envelope with a practiced hand. Emily's fingers clenched the armrests of her chair, her mind racing with thoughts of what might be revealed. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on the attorney, with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she held her sketchbook tightly, as if it were a talisman against the unknown. Rachel, seated at the far end, maintained her composure, though her eyes betrayed a sharp, calculating gleam. She had always been the most strategic of the siblings, and this moment was no exception. Mr. Larkin began to read aloud, his voice measured and precise. To my beloved children, Emily, Daniel, Sarah, and Rachel, I leave the fruits of my labor and the legacy of our family. It is my wish that you decide amongst yourselves how to divide the inheritance. I trust that you will honor my memory by finding a fair and just resolution. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Emily's eyes widened, and she exchanged a look of disbelief with Daniel. Sarah's face flushed, and Rachel's lips curled into a faint, inscrutable smile. Dad always did believe in our ability to handle things ourselves, Daniel said, attempting to lighten the mood. His voice, though steady, held a note of disbelief. Rachel's gaze was sharp as she assessed her siblings. It seems he wanted us to work things out on our own terms. I suppose we'll need to be practical about this. Emily swallowed hard, trying to keep her emotions in check. He must have had a reason for this. We should respect his wishes and approach this with fairness. Sarah looked around at her siblings, her voice barely above a whisper. But how do we even begin? It's not like we can just split everything evenly. Rachel's eyes glittered with a strategic glint. I think it's clear that we need to consider what each of us needs and deserves. Perhaps a more detailed discussion is in order. As the siblings began to discuss their options, the conversation quickly grew heated. Daniel argued for a fair division based on their respective contributions and needs. We should think about what each of us has done for the family and the estate. It's not just about dividing the money. Rachel, however, was less concerned with fairness and more focused on practicality. We need to consider the future. If we don't manage this wisely, we could end up losing everything Dad worked so hard to build. Emily attempted to mediate, her voice calm and measured. I agree that we need to be practical, but we also need to honor Dad's legacy. He always wanted us to stay together as a family. Sarah, feeling increasingly overwhelmed, spoke up. I just want enough to be able to continue my work as an artist. I don't need much, but I don't want to be left with nothing. The discussion grew more intense, with each sibling staking their claim and defending their position. The room, once a symbol of family unity, was now charged with tension and unspoken frustrations. Mr. Larkin watched the exchange with a somber expression, his role as an observer now taking on a new significance. The reading of the will had set the stage for a dramatic family conflict. The following morning dawned overcast and dreary, a fitting backdrop for the continued tension within Hawthorne Manor. The once vibrant estate seemed even more subdued, its grand rooms now echoing with the quiet discord that had become a constant presence. The siblings convened in the library, a room filled with towering bookshelves and the faint smell of old paper. An environment that, once a refuge of intellectual pursuit and solace, now felt like a battleground. Emily was the first to arrive, her demeanor a blend of determination and fatigue. She sank into one of the plush armchairs by the fireplace, her fingers absently tracing the ornate patterns on the armrests. Her mind was a whirl of competing thoughts, trying to balance her siblings' varying needs with their father's wishes. Daniel entered next, his steps heavy, as if the weight of the situation was dragging him down. He threw a glance at the room's high ceilings and the expansive collection of books that seemed to mock their predicament. He plopped into a chair opposite Emily, his posture rigid with tension. "Morning," he muttered, though his tone lacked warmth. "I hope we can get some clarity today." Sarah arrived last, carrying her sketchbook as if it were a lifeline. She hesitated in the doorway, her eyes flickering around the room as if searching for some sign of relief from the mounting pressure. Her usual calm was replaced by a visible anxiety, and she took a seat by the window, her gaze fixed on the gray skies outside. Rachel, true to form, was punctual and impeccably dressed, her dark eyes scanning the room with a calculating gleam. She made her way to a chair near the center of the room, her movements precise and deliberate. "Good morning," Rachel said, her voice smooth but carrying an edge. "I trust everyone is ready to address the pressing issues at hand." Emily took a deep breath and addressed her siblings, trying to take control of the situation. "Let's focus on finding a fair solution. We need to discuss our priorities and come up with a plan that respects both Dad's wishes and our individual needs." Rachel's lips curled into a faint smile. "Fairness is subjective. We need to be realistic about what each of us can handle and what's practical for the estate's future." Daniel leaned forward, his frustration barely masked. "I get that practicality is important, Rachel, but this isn't just about numbers. We need to remember what Dad wanted for us. We're supposed to come together, not tear each other apart. Sarah shifted in her seat, her fingers nervously tapping on her sketchbook. I just don't want to be left out of the equation. I've always felt like my contributions were overlooked. Rachel's gaze turned sharp. Contributions are one thing, but we also need to consider our long-term needs. We can't afford to make decisions based solely on sentimentality. Emily intervened, her voice firm yet empathetic. Rachel, we all have different needs and desires. It's important that we balance those with the legacy Dad left us. We should find a way to address everyone's concerns. The discussion quickly escalated, with Rachel's focus on practicalities clashing with Daniel's plea for fairness. Emily found herself caught in the middle, trying to mediate but feeling increasingly overwhelmed by the rising tide of discord. Look, Daniel said, his voice rising, Dad wanted us to work this out together. He didn't want us to be at each other's throats. We need to find a solution that honors his memory. Rachel's eyes narrowed. And how do you propose we do that, Daniel? By dividing everything equally and leaving the estate in disarray? Sarah finally spoke up, her voice trembling. I don't need much. I just want enough to continue my art. I've always been passionate about it, but I need financial stability to keep going. Rachel's expression softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. Sarah, I understand your needs, but we need to look at this from a broader perspective. The estate's value is significant, and we need to ensure it remains intact. Emily's frustration boiled over. We're not just dividing assets. We're dealing with our family's future. We have to find a way to balance our needs without losing sight of what's important. The conversation became a whirlwind of competing interests and unresolved emotions, each sibling grappling with their own priorities while trying to navigate the complexities of their father's will. The library, once a place of intellectual pursuit, had become a battleground of conflicting desires and strained relationships. As the hours passed, the siblings' arguments grew more heated, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against a rocky shore. The air in the library grew heavy with tension, the weight of their disagreement palpable. Finally, Emily stood up, her face flushed with exhaustion. We need to take a break. Let's reconvene later when we've had a chance to think things through. The siblings dispersed, each retreating to their own corner of the manor, leaving behind the charged atmosphere of the library. As Emily walked down the empty corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that the rift between them was widening, threatening to unravel the very fabric of their family. The quiet of the manor was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that had roiled through the library just hours before. Emily wandered through the dimly lit corridors, seeking solace in the familiar surroundings of Hawthorne Manor. Her steps were hesitant, echoing softly off the marble floors as she passed the portraits of her ancestors, their stern faces seemingly watching her every move. She reached her father's study, a room she had not entered since his passing. The heavy mahogany door felt cold beneath her touch, a tangible reminder of the distance that had grown between them. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was as she remembered, lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, filled with leather-bound volumes and the faint scent of old paper. Her father's large, imposing desk stood at the center, cluttered with papers and personal effects. Emily's gaze fell on the desk, where a solitary object caught her eye, a small, ornate box with intricate carvings. It was out of place among the scattered papers and dusty books. Intrigued, she approached it and lifted the lid to reveal a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. One envelope in particular was marked with her father's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, Emily untied the ribbon and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written on fine stationery. She recognized her father's elegant script immediately, each word penned with the precision and care that had characterized his life. As she read the letter, her heart pounded with a mix of anxiety and hope. The words were both a revelation and a balm, offering insight into her father's intentions and feelings. To my beloved children, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I want you to know how deeply I have cherished each of you and how much I have hoped for your happiness and unity. The decision I have left for you regarding my estate is not one of convenience, but of principle. You see, my greatest wish was always for you to come together as a family, not just in the good times, but through the challenges. The wealth and assets I have accumulated are but a reflection of the life I lived, but they are not the essence of our family. The essence lies in your ability to support and understand each other. I hope you will find a way to divide the inheritance with respect and consideration for each other's dreams and needs. Remember, true wealth is measured not in material possessions, but in the strength of your bonds and the kindness you show one another. With all my love, Charles. Emily's hand shook as she folded the letter, her eyes misting over with tears. The words seemed to echo through the empty study, a poignant reminder of her father's enduring wisdom and love. She realized that the inheritance was more than a financial settlement. It was a test of their unity and respect for each other. Determined to share this revelation with her siblings, Emily gathered her composure and made her way to the library. She found Daniel, Rachel, and Sarah already gathered, their expressions a mix of frustration and exhaustion. The room seemed even colder now, the earlier warmth replaced by a palpable tension. Emily cleared her throat, drawing their attention. "I found something in Dad's study," she said, holding up the letter. "I think it's important for us to read this together." Rachel raised an eyebrow, her expression skeptical but curious. "What's this about?" Emily handed the letter to Daniel, who took it with a nod of appreciation. He read the letter aloud, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. As he reached the end, the room fell into a profound silence. Rachel's gaze softened, her usual composure cracking for the first time. "I had no idea Dad felt this way. It's unexpected." Daniel looked at Emily, his expression one of understanding. "He was always focused on family. This letter makes it clear that he wanted us to prioritize our relationship over the money." Sarah, who had been listening intently, spoke up, her voice gentle. "I think he was trying to remind us of what really matters. It's not just about splitting assets, it's about staying together." Rachel's eyes darted around the room, her mind clearly working through the implications of the letter. "I suppose this changes things. We need to find a way to honor Dad's wishes while still addressing our own needs." Emily nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's use this letter as a guide. We can discuss our needs and find a way to balance them with the legacy Dad wanted us to uphold." The siblings gathered closer, their earlier animosity giving way to a tentative cooperation. The letter had offered a new perspective, a beacon of clarity in the murky waters of their disagreement. As they began to talk, their voices carried a newfound tone of respect and empathy, their earlier conflicts momentarily set aside. The atmosphere in Hawthorne Manor had shifted from one of discord to a tentative calm. The siblings gathered around the grand dining table, their previous arguments replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. The opulent surroundings with its gold-rimmed plates and crystal chandeliers now felt like a backdrop to a pivotal moment of reconciliation. Emily was the first to speak, her voice steady and clear. "We've all had a chance to reflect on Dad's letter and what it means for us. I think it's time we move beyond our disagreements and find a solution that respects both his wishes and our individual needs." Daniel, seated across from Emily, nodded in agreement. His expression was more open than it had been during their earlier debates. "I think we can agree that we need to balance our personal desires with the legacy Dad wanted us to uphold." Rachel, who had been unusually quiet, leaned forward, her eyes focused and serious. "I've had some time to think about our options. I believe we need a plan that ensures the long-term stability of the estate while addressing each of our needs. I propose we create a fund to support our individual goals, but also retain the manor as a family retreat." Sarah, who had been fidgeting with her napkin, looked up with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "That sounds like a fair compromise. I just want to make sure that my art can be supported without having to worry about financial instability." Emily glanced around at her siblings, noting their thoughtful expressions. "If we're going to make this work, we need to be open and honest about what we need and what we can realistically offer each other." Rachel took a deep breath and began to outline her proposal. "Here's what I'm thinking. We establish a family fund with a portion of the inheritance. This fund will be used to support each of our individual projects and needs. The remainder of the estate, including the manor, will be preserved as a shared family asset." Daniel considered Rachel's proposal, his eyes narrowing slightly as he weighed the implications. "That could work, but we need to ensure that the fund is managed fairly and transparently. We don't want to end up with misunderstandings or conflicts down the line." Emily nodded, appreciating Daniel's point. "We could set up a family council to oversee the fund's management. This way we can ensure that everyone's voice is heard and that decisions are made with consensus." Sarah, feeling more hopeful, spoke up. "I'm willing to contribute my share of the inheritance to the fund if it means that we can support each other's dreams. I just want to be able to continue my work without constantly worrying about money." Rachel's eyes softened, and she nodded in agreement. "I'm open to contributing as well. It's important that we all have the opportunity to pursue our goals." The siblings continued to discuss the details of the fund, their conversation increasingly focused and constructive. They debated the allocation of resources, the management of the estate, and the practicalities of maintaining the manor as a family retreat. As the discussion progressed, the tension that had once pervaded their conversations began to dissipate. The siblings found themselves working together to create a plan that honored their father's wishes while addressing their individual needs. The sense of collaboration and mutual respect grew, replacing the earlier discord with a shared sense of purpose. Eventually, the outlines of their agreement took shape. The fund would be established with a portion of the inheritance, managed by a family council to ensure fairness and transparency. The manor would remain a family asset, serving as a place for gatherings and shared memories. Each sibling would receive a portion of the inheritance to support their personal goals, with a commitment to work together to preserve the estate's legacy. Emily looked around the table, feeling a surge of relief and accomplishment. I think we've come up with a plan that honors Dad's wishes and allows us to move forward as a family. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Daniel smiled, his earlier tension easing. I agree. It feels good to be working together for a common goal. Rachel's expression was thoughtful but hopeful. I think we're on the right track. Let's make sure we follow through with this plan and continue to support each other. Sarah, her voice filled with quiet determination, added, I'm ready to move forward. This is a chance for us to come together and build something meaningful. As the meeting concluded, the siblings felt a renewed sense of unity. The plan they had crafted was not just a solution to their inheritance dispute, but a testament to their ability to overcome adversity and honor their father's legacy. The future of Hawthorne Manor and their familial bond now seemed brighter and more promising. The weeks following the siblings' agreement passed with a sense of cautious optimism. The family's plan was set into motion. The fund was established, the manor was preserved as a family retreat, and each sibling began working toward their individual goals. Yet beneath this facade of resolution, old tensions and unresolved issues simmered, threatening to disrupt their fragile harmony. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emily decided to visit the manor's garden, a place that had always provided her with solace and clarity. The garden was a sprawling expanse of manicured lawns and colorful blooms, a sanctuary amidst the grandeur of Hawthorne Manor. As she walked along the cobblestone paths, her thoughts wandered to her father's legacy and the new responsibilities that came with it. She paused by the old stone bench beneath a gnarled oak tree, its leaves turning brilliant shades of orange and gold. The bench had been a favorite spot of her father's, a place where he had often retreated for quiet reflection. Emily sat down, letting the serene beauty of the garden wash over her. Her reverie was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. She turned to see Rachel walking briskly toward her, her expression troubled. Emily, Rachel said, her voice edged with concern. We need to talk. Emily's brow furrowed. What's wrong? Rachel took a seat beside her, her gaze fixed on the garden's vibrant colors. I've been reviewing the accounts for the fund, and there's something I need to discuss with you. I've noticed discrepancies, minor but enough to raise questions. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Discrepancies? What do you mean? Rachel handed Emily a folder containing financial statements and ledgers. I'm not accusing anyone of wrongdoing, but some of the figures don't quite add up. I think we need to investigate further to ensure everything is in order. Emily scanned the documents, her mind racing. This could just be an error. I'll take a closer look and see if I can figure out what's going on. Rachel nodded, her expression softening. I hope it's nothing serious, but given the stakes, we can't afford to ignore any inconsistencies. As Rachel left, Emily felt a growing sense of unease. The shadows of past conflicts seemed to loom larger, threatening to disrupt the fragile peace they had worked so hard to achieve. Determined to address the issue head-on, Emily spent the next few hours poring over the financial documents. The discrepancies were subtle but noticeable. A missing deposit here, an unexplained expense there. By the evening, Emily felt a pang of exhaustion and frustration. She decided to take a break and clear her mind. As she walked through the manor's grand corridors, she overheard voices coming from the library. Curious, she approached the door and peered inside. Daniel and Sarah were engaged in a heated discussion, their voices rising and falling with increasing intensity. I just don't understand why you're so fixated on this, Sarah said, her tone frustrated. The fund is supposed to support our goals. We've made a lot of progress, but you're still worried about every little detail. Daniel's voice was sharp. It's not about being fixated. It's about making sure everything is managed properly. We can't afford to let things slip through the cracks. Emily stepped into the room, interrupting their argument. What's going on? Both siblings turned to her, their expressions a mix of guilt and defensiveness. We were just discussing the fund, Daniel said, his voice softer now. There are concerns about its management and how we're tracking expenses. Emily nodded, her mind racing. I've noticed some discrepancies in the financial statements. Rachel brought them to my attention earlier. I'm going to look into it further. Sarah's face fell. I didn't realize things were that serious. I thought we were making progress. Emily's heart ached at the sight of Sarah's disappointment. We are making progress. But we need to address these issues to ensure everything is in order. I'll keep you updated on what I find. As the siblings discussed the matter further, the underlying tension became more apparent. Old grievances and frustrations resurfaced, casting shadows over their recent efforts to reconcile. The discussions about the fund's management revealed deeper issues: distrust, miscommunication, and the lingering effects of past conflicts. Emily spent the next few days working tirelessly to unravel the discrepancies. She reached out to the family's financial advisor, reviewed additional documents, and sought clarity on each issue. The process was grueling, but she was determined to uncover the truth and restore confidence in their agreement. One evening, after days of investigation, Emily gathered her siblings in the library to share her findings. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of the fireplace casting flickering shadows on the walls. The atmosphere was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. "I've reviewed the accounts thoroughly," Emily began, her voice steady but weary. There were indeed some discrepancies, but they were due to clerical errors rather than anything intentional. Rachel's expression was one of relief mixed with lingering concern. "I'm glad to hear it wasn't something more serious, but we need to ensure we have stronger oversight going forward." Daniel nodded in agreement. "We should implement regular audits and establish clear procedures for managing the fund." Sarah, her voice soft but resolute, added, "I agree. We need to be transparent and make sure everyone is on the same page." The siblings reached a consensus to strengthen their oversight and communication regarding the fund. The discussions about their father's legacy and the future of the estate had unearthed old wounds, but they had also provided an opportunity for growth and understanding. As the meeting concluded, Emily felt a renewed sense of hope. The shadows of the past were still present, but the siblings were learning to confront them with honesty and determination. The path ahead was still uncertain, but they were moving forward together, united by their shared commitment to their father's legacy and their own growth. The first snowfall of winter had blanketed Hawthorne Manor in a serene white coat, transforming the estate into a picturesque winter wonderland. The once familiar grandeur of the manor now seemed softer, more muted, under the soft embrace of snow. The garden, with its frost-covered flowers and bare branches, looked like a scene from a forgotten fairy tale. Inside, the manor was a stark contrast to the outside world. The air was warm, filled with the comforting sense of cinnamon and pine from the holiday preparations. Yet despite the festive decorations and cozy fires, a sense of unease lingered. The recent issues with the fund had strained the siblings' relationships, and while they had agreed on a course of action, trust was still fragile. Emily, wrapped in a thick woolen sweater, walked through the grand hall, her thoughts consumed by the ongoing efforts to rebuild their trust. She had organized a family gathering in an attempt to reconnect and strengthen their bonds, hoping that a shared experience might mend the rift that had formed. As she approached the library, where the gathering was set to take place, she found Rachel and Sarah already there. The room was adorned with holiday decorations, including a large tree in the corner, its branches heavy with twinkling lights and shimmering ornaments. The table was set with an array of holiday treats, and the warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the cold winter outside. Rachel was arranging a tray of cookies, her movements meticulous and precise. She glanced up as Emily entered, her expression polite but guarded. "Emily, everything is almost ready. I think we're going to have a nice evening." Sarah was seated by the fireplace, sketching in her notebook. Her demeanor was more relaxed than it had been in recent weeks, though there was a lingering sadness in her eyes. She looked up and offered a tentative smile. "I'm glad we're doing this. It feels like we haven't spent much time together lately." Emily nodded, her own anxiety giving way to a sense of determination. "I think it's important for us to reconnect and focus on the positives. We've made progress with the fund, and I want us to move forward with a renewed sense of unity." Rachel set down the tray of cookies and took a seat across from Sarah. "Agreed. But we also need to address the lingering issues and ensure we're on the same page moving forward." As they chatted and sipped hot cocoa, Daniel arrived, his expression warm but thoughtful. He greeted his siblings with a smile and took a seat at the table. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare. I hope I didn't miss too much." Emily greeted him with a smile. "Not at all. We were just catching up. It's good to have everyone here." The siblings settled into conversation, their initial hesitance gradually giving way to more relaxed and genuine interactions. They discussed their progress with the fund, the upcoming holiday plans, and their personal goals. The festive atmosphere seemed to help ease the tension, and for the first time in a while, the conversation flowed more naturally. As the evening progressed, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. The warmth of the gathering and the shared laughter seemed to mend the cracks that had formed in their relationships. They talked about their father's legacy, reminiscing about the holiday traditions he had cherished and the values he had instilled in them. Just as the evening seemed to be settling into a comfortable rhythm, Rachel stood up, her expression serious. I think it's important for us to address something that's been on my mind. Despite our progress, there are still some unresolved issues between us. Daniel looked up, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? Rachel took a deep breath, her gaze shifting to each of her siblings in turn. I've been thinking about how we can rebuild trust and ensure that we're all moving forward together. It's clear that there are still some underlying concerns, and I think we need to address them openly. Emily felt a pang of unease but nodded. I agree. It's important for us to be honest with each other and address any lingering issues. Rachel continued, her voice steady. One of the things we need to work on is communication. We've all been guilty of holding back our true feelings or making assumptions. We need to be more transparent with each other and make sure that we're all on the same page. Sarah looked thoughtful. I've been feeling a bit excluded from some of the decision-making processes. I want to make sure that my voice is heard and that I'm involved in discussions about the fund and the manor. Daniel nodded in agreement. I felt the same way at times. I think we all need to be more proactive in including each other in addressing concerns before they become issues. Emily felt a renewed sense of resolve. We need to establish regular family meetings where we can discuss any concerns and ensure that everyone is involved in decision-making. It's important for us to maintain open lines of communication and work together as a team. The siblings agreed to implement regular family meetings and to make a concerted effort to communicate more openly. The conversation marked a significant step in their journey toward rebuilding trust and fostering a stronger family bond. As the evening drew to a close, the siblings stood together by the fireplace, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the flames. The festive decorations and the warmth of the room created a sense of togetherness that had been missing for some time. Emily looked around at her siblings, feeling a mixture of relief and hope. I'm glad we had this chance to talk and reconnect. It feels like we're making progress, and I believe we can continue to strengthen our relationships moving forward. Rachel, her expression softened, nodded in agreement. I'm hopeful that we can work through our issues and build a stronger foundation for the future. Sarah, her voice filled with quiet determination, added, I'm committed to working together and supporting each other. This is our chance to honor Dad's legacy and create something meaningful. Daniel smiled, his earlier tension replaced by a sense of optimism. I agree. Let's move forward with renewed energy and a focus on our family's future. As the siblings embraced, the warmth of their unity seemed to melt away the lingering shadows of the past.